Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 1 of Breakthroughs with Bree. I'm Bree. I'm a channeler. I'm an astrologer. I'm an energy healer, and I'm a psychic. And on this podcast, we will be having breakthroughs about our self-growth, self-healing, and spiritual awakening journeys. And all of this is in pursuit of our most authentic, free, and joyful lives that we want to live. Okay, so in all of my episodes, I am planning on having different co-hosts, but today you're getting a solo episode. And for today, in each episode, we will have a channeled message that will be like the topic of the episode. So today, our channeled topic and where we're having some breakthroughs today is on what is healing? Like, what do people mean by that? Like, what is it? I'm going to give my definition on that and what I feel like the process of that is. And specifically how that is integral, that is foundational to our spiritual practices, especially manifesting. So I'm really excited to talk to you about that today. Had a huge download about it probably over a month ago. And it's been waiting to come through. Now that we have the podcast, this feels like a very, very perfect episode 1 topic. I will have timestamps of each segment and section of the podcast in the description. So if you want to skip ahead to a part of it that feels like very important to you or that you're drawn to, by all means, go wherever you want. The information will be there. And I think that it's time for us to get started. Okay, so to start off this first episode, I want to give a breakdown of what you can expect each week on these video podcast episodes. Okay, so to start, I will have a co-host each week. So I'm going to start by introducing them and we're going to get to know the co-hosts a little bit. I am going to ask each co-host to list the same information if they know it. And for this week, I'm going to list that information about myself for you. You can get to know me a little bit. And then starting next week with the co-hosts, they'll all be answering these questions. So these are the pieces of information I'm going to ask them to list. I'm going to ask them to list their sun, moon, and rising of their astrology natal birth chart. If they are familiar with the Mystic Michaela, who is an aura reader psychic, and they've had their colors confirmed by her, their aura colors, what are their aura colors? If they know like their human design or their Enneagram or their Myers-Briggs, like these fun personality types, tell us what they are. For all of us who are into that kind of stuff, we'll get a sense a little bit about who they are. I think it's so fun. Then if they do have a business or they're an influencer or something, I'm going to ask them a little bit about their business. What services, what products do you provide? And why do you love to do it? You're going to hear a little bit about that. And then we're going to move into a weekly update. So on the weekly update, we're going to both answer how we feeling this week. And we're also going to answer the same 2 questions every week. It's going to be, where did we find joy this week? And where did we find growth this week? Each host will answer that. After the weekly check-in, we're going to go into a current affairs segment. I will spend a minute talking about any prominent astrological transits of the week. And we're also going to talk about some pop culture topics. I'm a pop culture girly. I love it. I think it's really fun. And I think it's really fascinating. So we're going to spend a minute talking about like our vibe, our feeling about some pop culture topics. Then we're going to get into the meat of the episode, which is the channel topic section. In this section, I'm going to talk about the channeled messages and guidance and information that I've gotten about whatever the topic is for that week. Co-hosts will be able to contribute to that if they want to. If they don't, that's great too. We'll have lots of information anyway. And then for the last segment will be Ask Bree, which is like an advice segment where you, my listeners, will be able to submit questions and I will be giving my 2 cents as to your situation and what you could consider and do moving forward, as well as pulling a card for you in relation to your question. And that will wrap up the episodes each week. And like I said, today I'm running the show. You're going to get all those things with me. And I hope you enjoy. So let's get started. Okay, so we're starting the episodes getting to know the co-host. And this week you get to know the host, me. Okay, so I'm Bree. I live in the greater Los Angeles area in California, and I run an alternative healing business called Healing with Bree. With that business, I do virtual one-on-one services with people. Right now, those services include Akashic Records channeling, astrology service like birth chart consultations and energy healing. So I'm able to do one-on-one sessions with people again on Zoom. It's virtual. I also run a couple social media accounts. So Healing with Bree on Instagram and healing dot with Brie on TikTok. And on these platforms, I'm talking about all things holistic healing, trauma healing, spirituality, mysticism, astrology, like, in a 30-second to 3-minute version of it. So honestly, it'll probably be very similar to topics we talk about here, just in a shorter duration. So that's Healing with Brie. In terms of the fun questions, here's my little tidbit. So I am a Virgo sun and a Pisces moon. I'm a full moon baby, and I'm a Cancer rising. I am a purple and indigo aura, Mystic Michaela. I just found out my human design the other day, and I am a 4/6 manifesting generator. The last time I looked at my Myers-Briggs, I had changed, and I'm an INFP, but I'm like in the middle on a lot of those. And the last time I did Enneagram, I was a 2-wing 3, which is interesting because I used to be a 3-wing 2 and it changed, so that kind of stuff happens. And lastly, and most importantly, according to Pottermore, I am a Hufflepuff. I feel very proud of this. I feel like the whole common room party fad on TikTok really redeemed us. And I feel really happy about that. So proud Hufflepuff over here. If I am missing any of those fun, like personality types or like spirituality types or something like that, please put in the comments because I would love to include them. I genuinely think that they're the best. Okay, the last part that I'm going to like to get from my co-hosts is their why about why they love doing what they do. I feel like that's going to come up a lot in this channel topic because I'm supporting people's healing and we're going to be talking about like what that is and why that's important, all that kind of stuff. But I will say now that in my own healing journey, I came to realize that it felt very important to me. Like it felt like an important cause to support other people in their healing journey too. I realized that I have a passion for that. I realized I have a talent for that. And again, it felt like a really important way to contribute to the world from my own like soul's perspective. So that's why I'm doing this. That's why I got into this. And that's why I love it, really love it. So that's a little bit about me. And next we're going to move into the weekly check-in. Okay, so for this week's weekly check-in, technically I'm recording this during the week of May 9th, which is the week before this is being posted. This is getting posted on Monday, May 15th. And I just have to say, the energy feels so much lighter and clearer after that eclipse. We had that huge eclipse on May 5th. And man, did it feel heavy. And what's crazy too is I did a poll on my Instagram of like, are you guys feeling it? Was it really strong? Maybe, like not at all. Usually when I do a poll like that during a lunation, like a full moon or something, it's kind of a mixed bag, maybe a little bit more of people feeling it. But in this one, I swear it was like 89, 95% of people all said that they were feeling it very intensely. So I think it was a shared experience that we all felt like, woof, it was a lot. But I will say around Tuesday of this week, which would have been the 9th, I felt personally the energy got a lot lighter. I feel like things moved, like, if a gust of wind came and kind of like blew it all out, like it felt a lot better. Personally, I'm feeling refreshed. I'm feeling renewed. I've heard people use words like they feel totally transformed coming out of that season because it was also the end of the Scorpio Taurus eclipses that have been happening since the fall of 2019. So there's like a whole cycle of rebirth and change and transformation that we've all been experiencing to different degrees that like wrapped up on that day. It's very intense. Hope everybody's feeling better too. Okay, in terms of where did I find joy this week? I had my best friend come to visit this last weekend. And a little spoiler alert, she may or may not be a co-host on the next episode. I'm really excited for you guys to meet her and for her to join me. But not only was it really special that she came and spent time, but specifically there was this one night where we played categories, her, me, and my husband, and it was so fun. Like we laughed so hard, just so many elements of this stupid freaking game. It was wonderful. And I just like, I'm going to think about the joy of that, of like laughing with them, two of my favorite people on this random Sunday night, like I'm going to be able to think back on that and just feel happy just at the memory of that. Like that feels really special to me. I don't take those kind of things for granted. I feel like they're very special. So that was a place of great joy to me this week. um, where did I find growth this week? All right. This week, I have obviously been working on this podcast. You would probably not believe the very, very long list of things that are involved with creating and launching a podcast like this, especially to like the degree that I want to be able to do it. Very long list of things to do, but I've been feeling so inspired and motivated and just like passionate about it. On the other side of it, I have been attending to some health stuff for quite some time, that involves some like adrenal fatigue and just like my body feeling really tired. This week, I got on Monday specifically, I got home from taking my friend to the airport and I was feeling so tired. And I just knew that that night was going to be a night where I needed to rest, right? I'm learning to really honor my body signals for what it needs. And specifically, this relationship between I'm really excited, I have a long to do list of things I need to do, and like my body's feeling tired and it's saying, hold up, breaks, rest for a minute. So, in trying to relate to this in a new way, previously, I would disassociate from my body signals and just like power through, right? No surprise that I now am in like an adrenal fatigue situation, which is improving, by the way. Um, so I literally sat and it felt like a moment to practice this new relationship between those things that I'm trying to develop. I sat in my car and I said a prayer. I said, look, guides, angels, I feel like doing this podcast stuff is like divinely inspired, right? Feels aligned. I'm excited to do it. But I'm also honoring my body's healing process right now. And I can tell that I need a rest. I'm having a little bit of anxiety about if there will be enough moments of having energy to be able to get everything done on this list because the launch date's coming up. I want to give that up to you. I'm asking you, please give me enough moments of energy for me to easily get this list done. I will rest in the moments I need to rest without stress because you don't really rest that well when you're feeling stressed out. I will fully like honor the moments of rest if you promise me that you will help bring me the moments of energy to easily get everything done. I was like, oh, great. That's it. I'm going to trust it. So far, so good. I'm happy to report that I have been feeling a lot more energy and I'm moving through that list easily, but that was definitely a moment of practice and of growth for me this week. So that's my weekly check-in. All right. So for our current affairs, I got some astrology stuff for you guys, and we have some fun pop culture topics just to touch on. So by the time that this comes out on May 15th, Mercury will have finally gone direct. We will be out of Mercury retrograde. Whew, fantastic. Something to reflect on. Mercury is the planet of thinking, of communication, of how we logic, how we take in information, we process it, how do we then encode messages and like communicate them back out to people, right? That whole process is represented by Mercury. Retrograde seasons, I kind of like to think of them as like review periods. Like if you wrote a chapter and you went back and you read and reviewed the chapter before you went on to writing the other one. That's kind of like how I feel one way to interpret retrogrades are. So if you think back, this retrograde season started on April 21st, at the end of April. Maybe it's related very specifically to these ideas of how you're processing information or communicating, or how people are communicating to you, also associations with technology. Um, was there anything that showed itself when you were in this review period? A place where you need to do an edit, something wasn't aligned, there needs to be an adjustment made before you move forward and keep writing the next chapter. Something to think about. Another fun aspect that happened this last week is the Sun conjunct Uranus. Here, fun background on this. Uranus is one of the slower moving planets. It occupies, like from when it starts at 0 degrees of Taurus to when it gets to 30 degrees of Taurus, it takes 7 years for it to move through one zodiac sign. So for it to move through the whole sky, through all 12 zodiac signs, takes about 84 years. Long, long time. The sun, on the other hand, which by the way is the planet that represents our consciousness, the things that we're mindful of, that we're aware of, aspects of our truth, a very, very, very important planet in our day-to-day experience. That planet moves a lot faster. You could probably guess this, but the sun stays in a zodiac sign for about a month. And it takes 12 months, it takes a year to move through all 12. So it moves a lot faster. With all that to be said, the sun meets with Uranus in the skies, conjunct with Uranus about once a year. Uranus is the planet of breakthroughs and sudden awarenesses, of progression, of individuality, of thinking outside the box, thinking kind of clinically. There's associations with technology and all this kind of stuff. It's a very big and very powerful planet. It's really cool to see the sun and Uranus come together because a lot of people associate this with things like big breakthroughs or maybe sudden changes coming into our awareness, right? Our sun. So I'm curious when Saturn and Uranus moved into like a 3-degree orb with each other, when they kind of became conjunct, was around Saturday, May 6th. And then they moved out of that like really close conjunction range on Sunday, May 14th. So last week, by the time that this episode comes out. Did you have any big breakthroughs? Did you have any sudden changes? Did you have like crazy ideas, like out of the box ideas that came up? Right? Like these are all associations with Uranus. I wonder if those things came into again, like your conscious mind feeling important, integrating into your truth during that conjunction. Very interesting. Okay, so now for our pop culture topics. First one, the royal coronation happened. I am fascinated by the royals. And what I found the most fascinating was actually Mystic Michaela's reading about the whole situation. I've mentioned her a couple times, so I'll just take a minute to address this now. She is a psychic or a reader and medium. I highly recommend you following her Instagram and her podcast, Know Your Aura. She is able to see our auric field and its prominent colors, our aura colors. And she gets a lot of psychic messages via these aura colors. And each color has its own meaning and its own association. It's kind of like having a personality type in that it helps you understand yourself a little better, can help you understand other people better, can help you come into contact with like the authentic parts of your spirit and your signature, your energy signature, right? It's fabulous. She's wonderful. A lot of people who follow me and might be listening to this are probably in what we call the Mystic Michaela spiritual family. It's like the people who follow her and her podcast, and also specifically a Facebook group that she has that's wonderful and high vibe. If it calls to you, I absolutely recommend checking it out. But anyway, on her social media, she does like psychic readings and aura readings of pop culture stuff. She did this for the royal coronation. I just found it so interesting. Um, she talks about how Harry comes into it and everybody's kind of like trying to ignore him. And he acknowledges that, but is like really just trying to keep it together, keep it happy, light and bright. It feels awkward for him. And he just like wanted to get in and out, which absolutely was my vibe too. I'll say the other thing that I kind of sense from them and all of the drama that's happened is I feel like the logic, what they're operating from, like within the royal family, is like there's a threat. And I don't mean Harry specifically. I mean like this goes a lot deeper. Like there's this threat of like the monarchy not existing anymore, right? Um, and all of the logic that they use for like what they decide to do and how they move is ultimately fear-based because they're like terrified of the monarchy getting dissolved or something. And so now that, Harry's spoken his piece and like revealed a lot more about like decisions that are being made and how people are moving, I feel like a lot of the reaction is really ego based because the ego mind is what I'm referring to. Like when we're in a fear state, ego's running the show. They're driving that ship, right? So I feel like for them to be in this fear state about like their existence that they are being like conditioned to protect and uphold, right? It's their duty. I feel like their egos are super triggered, right? And they're justifying it as, again, this sense of duty and protecting something they've been told is really important. And and again, it's like this ego thing now. And that's why there's like a lot of defensiveness and maybe some pettiness and all that kind of stuff. Um, which I don't envy Harry for having to negotiate or like navigate, you know? The other pop culture topic that caught my attention was the Weeknd talking about like he's ready to kill the Weekends, like kill the image of the Weeknd in his artistic career. Again, coming back to Mystic Michaela, I'm pretty sure he's a blue and purple aura, if I remember correctly. He's definitely purple. And she talks about purples being very creative in general and how that cycle of creativity in itself lends to sort of like a death and rebirth of like identity and of ideas and passions and interests. Like there's just always this like changeable nature of it. Um, and so it's just so interesting to me that he's even using the language of like kill the weekend, right? Like that evokes a certain thing for all of us to use that kind of term. And I can sense on him that he takes his craft very seriously, right? And I don't feel the need to judge that as good or bad, just an observation. And so it feels like in this pursuit of his creativity and his identity and how serious it feels to him, like this concept of like, oh, it's time for this thing to die. It's got to be reborn. Like this is feeling like it's coming to its end. I need to like metamorphosis into something else. Like my creative self is like, I'm feeling the itch, you know? Like I find that so, so interesting. Um, and of course, I'd be very curious to see what he creates next because what he has so far has been, you know, great, like objectively very popular. But again, I feel it's very interesting that he's like using that language because I don't know that we always hear artists vocalizing and articulating the process that they have of reinventing themselves because they all do it to some extent, just as a part of not only honoring their own authentic and creative spirit, but like staying really engaged with like popular culture, you know? Let me know what you think about those things. If there's a certain pop culture thing you want us to talk about next week, drop it in the comments. All right. So for today's channeled message, we're going to be talking about what is healing. Like, what does that mean? Like, what are people referring to when they're talking about healing? When I'm talking about healing, like my whole business name is Healing with Bree. Like what do I mean by that? What is the process of that? And specifically with this download that I got, how that healing work is integral. It is foundational to any sort of spiritual practice and specifically manifesting work that you might do. Okay, so the inception of this was me listening to an episode of Haley Hoffman Smith's podcast, Big Conversations. Highly recommend. I'll put the name in the description. And it was an episode with Ishpreet K. I don't think she numbers her episodes, but it was the one on January 31st, 2023. And it was about choosing your reality in the quantum field, manifesting, that sort of thing. I had a huge download. Like I literally sat there, like paused the podcast and like started writing things down. Like I was like, whoa, um, whoa, a lot of information. Okay, let's just dig right into it. First, what do I mean when I say healing? If you were to go to Google and like look up the definition of it, it would say something like process of making or becoming sound and healthy again, repairing damage. I want to highlight this because it is my personal belief that we are not somehow damaged or broken. There's not something about you that needs to be fixed. It's important to acknowledge that because the words that we use, especially in these spiritual worlds, are very, very important. You are not broken. There's not something that needs to be fixed. In fact, your belief and your understanding of the truth that you are already whole, you are already perfect, like in your core, is very important. It's very important, and it's true for all of us. Okay, when I'm talking about healing and the healing process, what I'm talking about is the process of coming back into contact with your most authentic self, building and deepening that relationship with your most authentic self, which includes trust building, and then being able to like move and act freely from that place of authenticity in your life. The process of being able to do those things is what I'm referring to when I'm talking about the healing processes. Now you might be like, Ray, that's kind of abstract. What are the processes of doing that? Like that sounds great in theory, but like how do I get there? That is a fair question. And I have an answer for you. The way that this download came through for me is that it came by in sort of like a step-by-step process. I want to be clear, healing is not linear for anybody. And it's not like you get through one, cross it off the list, you get through two, you cross it off the list. It's not that either. Oftentimes you move through it, you kind of circle back on it. Some things you keep moving down the list, some things you come back up. Like it is just an ever moving and changing situation, and it's a different experience for everybody. However, I do feel like the reason why this download came in as like a step one, step two, step three is because one part of it enables the next part to happen easier. It's the only reason for the order. And for the sake of organization, my Virgo loves a little organization, right? My Pisces is like, no, let it be chaotic. And my Virgo's like, please, a system. Okay, so let's get into the process as it was shown to me in this download of what this healing is, of us coming back into contact with our most authentic selves living in this human world. Okay, so the first part of it would be an awakening. And I guess you could also call these healing processes like a spiritual awakening if you want. I guess that could be interchangeable, just kind of depends on your definition of it. And you'll see what I'm talking about and how it could be something a little different than maybe what you would categorize this. But anyway, first step, awakening. And this is what I mean by that. A lot of us who are doing this healing work had this moment where you it's like waking up from a dream or a sleep or something. And you kind of like get up and you look around and you're like, wait, I kind of feel like I've been like on autopilot. Like I've kind of been a zombie. Like I'm like, it's like I've been like robotic. Like I wake up, I do this, I do that. I say this to this person. We talk about this. I do this. I come home, we eat that, like it feels like it's just maybe a little mundane or repetitive. And you're like, wait a minute. Like, could it be different than this? Do I really want this? Do I enjoy this? Could I feel differently in my life? Like, is there more than this? That is the awakening. And really, I think the core of this is realizing that things could be different for you, in you, than they currently are. That is the first part of this awakening, this awareness paired with this like curiosity or this interest or this feeling like drawn towards, like, wait, what would it look like if things are different? Okay, the second part of this, and this is like a big, big chunk. I'm categorizing this as like starting to do self-awareness and self-healing work. Once you've asked that question of, wait, could things be different? Like, what is it that I really want? Most find ourselves, and this is even what I would recommend, being drawn towards starting to do some self-discovery work. A big piece of this I find is starting to realize and dig deeper on how your like subconscious presets are impacting your life. They say that we develop our ideas about ourselves and the world by age 7. That like we're building up our mental catalog, and then from that point on, our subconscious operates on that set of rules like for the rest of our life, unless we revisit them and we reprogram them. So part of this the self-awareness, the self-healing work is realizing like I have a whole set of programming in this brain of mine, and like I don't even know where to start to figure out where they came from, right? Like I'm like automatically reacting to certain situations a certain way, and I'm like, what's going on, right? Starting to do some of that investigative work about where is this coming from? Like, what is the pattern to begin with? Like, what is it? Why is it that way? Does that work for me? And okay, how can I start to like reprogram and change that? Right? That is like a very, very deep, complex, robust experience. So I don't mean to minimize it by just kind of throwing it all together, but just for the sake of like, describing it. That's we're putting that together. The other piece that I think is important and very common in this stage of healing is learning about stress and trauma responses, specifically about our nervous system getting activated into a stress response or getting dysregulated, and realizing that we have been living our lives mostly in a state of stress. And I mean that like literally, like our nervous system is in a stressed mode. It gets activated into the mechanisms that it has available to us to literally save our lives when we think our life is in danger, right? Sympathetic nervous system, like it's activated. When our nervous systems are dysregulated, there are a whole slew of physical and cognitive impacts that start to wear on the body. So when we realize and we learn about this concept of stress responses and dysregulated nervous systems and like the impacts we have, we're like, whoa, like this has been impacting almost every part of my life and my health. Like, whoa, whoa, like this is wild. With things like it can even be things like, if there's problems with weight gain, if there's problems with fatigue, if you're having gut issues and you just don't know why, if you're having skin issues, if you're having sleep issues, right? And the other thing that I think is really important, and I'll probably talk about this even a little bit more, is that it changes your cognitive function when you are in an activated stress response nervous system versus when you are in a I'm safe, rest and digest, a parasympathetic nervous system state. Okay. The parts of your brain that are activated, that there's blood flowing to, that you are actively engaging with are different in both nervous system states because this is like a physiological thing. Your body is directing resources to what it has evolved to know will save you when your life is threatened, right? Of course, your life is not like actually threatened, but we think it is. We're triggered into that. It's a whole thing, right? The parts of your brain that are able to socialize easily, to able to make connections, that are able to consider new ideas and learn new things and create new neural pathways, like all of those cognitive functions are associated with that parasympathetic, that safe, that rest digest nervous system state. When you are in a constant stress activated nervous system state, dysregulated nervous system state, not only does that have immense wear and tear on your body and going to impact, like it's going to catch up with you on your health if it has not already, but it also impacts your cognitive ability to interact with the world and to interact with yourself. Like it's a whole thing. Whoa. Big breakthrough on its own. If you've not heard of this concept, welcome to the party. It's life-changing. Okay. Bringing it back to this stage, becoming more aware of your own experience with the world, what it is, why it is, this whole stage, right? And again, that includes your beliefs about the world, your patterns, as well as your physiological experience with the world as a result of those beliefs, because they're intrinsically connected. Therapy is so helpful for this stage, so helpful, because part of that awareness is like seeing ourselves like almost like externally, like looking at ourselves from the outside. That's really hard to do because just like human nature, you've only ever experienced the world through your own mind. So being able to look at yourself with like an outside perspective can be very difficult, especially in the places where your ego is trying to protect something that feels very vulnerable. It's going to be really hard to access that. So having a third party person, especially somebody who's trained for a lot of these things to, be like, hey, do you realize that's not quite normal? What's more normal or what's more healthy is this, or have you thought about thinking about it a different way? That can be so supportive. And frankly, I think that our guides and our angels often will speak through people like our therapists. So find the right one. Don't be afraid to switch around to ones until you feel like you have a good one. Identify what you want to get out of therapy. Don't be afraid to be goal oriented and tell them, exactly the kind of thing you'd like to do. Can be really helpful. Okay, so what we're doing in that second stage, again, is we're increasing our level of awareness about our current state within ourselves and how we interact with the world, right? What we're doing is we're creating more consciousness and more mindfulness. This brings me into stage 3. When we have more consciousness available to us, like if we're spending, let's just say to start off with, again, you were spending 100% of your day in autopilot, right? You like wake up from it and you're like, wait, like what is this autopilot nonsense? Like, can there be something different, like that works better for me? You engage in some of the self-healing and awareness work and you're like, oh man, like, whoa, there's a lot going on here, right? Like you're starting to spend more and more percentage of your time in consciousness and awareness where you're not just like zombied out doing autopilot stuff, right? It's like a muscle, though. It does take practice to spend more and more time in that state. So be patient with yourself. Okay. When we have more consciousness available to us, we are in a place where we can start to come into contact with our own intuition, with our most authentic self, with our spirit, with our soul, whatever label you want to use for this. The label, it does not really matter. Use whatever term you feel most comfortable with. I'll say intuition or most authentic self. You are available to start receiving those messages again about these like nudges of things that you want to move towards or you're curious about things that do not work for you, are not aligned, things that are aligned and that you really want to do that feel good for you. Like all of those things that can come through when you're connected with this part of yourself. Like it's like the channel gets opened when you regulate your nervous system and when you start to reprogram and be more conscious and mindful in your experience. I personally believe that part of our purpose as a soul on this earth is to live our most authentic version of who we are, like on a soul level. Not only does that contribute to our own soul growth, but collectively, we're just so much more connected than we think we are. So even if you were in a silo doing this work of just being yourself, like just being yourself on a soul level, that would benefit us all in the collective, a million percent. So you doing this work to become more available, to become more conscious and be able to get more connected to your authentic self. Oh, that's where the money is. That's the ish. That's what's really important here. Doing these steps before and these healing work before helps make that process of getting connected available easier for you, right? So you start this process of deepening this relationship with your authentic self. At the beginning, I said that, let me actually go up and look at my notes of exactly what I said. Because again, in true Virgo nature, I want to be precise here. I said that healing is the process of coming back into contact with our most authentic selves, deepening that relationship and connection, which includes trust building, and then living out and embodying that freely into our lives. There is a reason why I said it that way, because our starting point of where we're at with connection to our authentic self, everybody's at a different starting point. Some people might get to that moment where they have more mindfulness and consciousness available to them in their day, and they might go, so what do I like? Like, what do I want? Like, I don't even know where to start. I haven't been getting these impulses, these messages from my authentic self, like as long as I can remember. Like, I don't even know where to start, right? Like that might be the starting point, like learning to come back into contact with those messages in the first place. And just a little, like, if you resonate with that, chances are you are deeply disconnected, disassociated from your body. So there's probably some somatic healing, body healing, coming back into contact with the sensations of your body that are going to help you do that. Just saying, we get our intuitive messages through our physical vessel here. It's a huge place where we get them. So there's always going to be somatic healing work involved. But if you're really starting from like, I don't get anything, probably somatic work is going to be really helpful. So anyway, you might be starting with, I need to come in contact. You might be in contact, but you might want to get more clear messages. You might want to get more frequent messages. You might want to be able to start to feel like you can trust those messages, right? That is that like relationship building and like deepening part of it. That might be more of your starting point. There's lots you can do there. And that's really important, right? Spend your time doing that. Like let yourself and ask your guides for help on that. Like say, hey, like help guide me on this path of feeling more connected and feeling like I can trust it. And let me tell you, they will. They absolutely will. Okay. And then the last part of it is acting from that place of authentic expression. It's one thing to get the messages, to understand them clearly, and even to trust that they're true. And it's another thing to be able to then embody and act that way in the world, like freely, without thought, without fear, whatever. Like that's a whole nother element of it. And a lot of us might experience Some of those limiting beliefs or patterns come up when we think about acting in the way that our soul really wants to act, because we might feel like we should be doing something else. Maybe that fawn trauma response, there's fight, flight, fawn, and freeze. Fawn is people pleasing. No, people pleasing is not your personality. People pleasing is a trauma response. It does not make you bad people, but it is also not a static part of you as a person. It is something that you are doing in response to fear or discomfort that you can reprogram so that you can act from your own authentic self and not from a feeling of obligation or fear about what's happening with other people. Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox about that. I'm sure I'll do an episode about that sometimes too. But that is an example of maybe knowing what your authentic self wants, but feeling like you can't. Like you might physically feel like you are incapable. There's that deep of a block about that, right? And here we go, back up into that healing work about it, right? Okay, so those are the 3 steps, 3 stages of this healing work. How this connects into spirituality and spiritual practices is I feel like there's a lot of people who get drawn into spirituality because it is something that like really resonates with them on a soul level, right? But maybe they feel resistant or like not sure or not bought into this idea of doing some more of this like trauma, psychological, even physical healing work, right? But oh, I don't need to do that. I just want to do the spiritual stuff, which by the way is a form of spiritual bypassing, which we really try not to do around here. The problem with not attending to those things feels like it absolutely has to do with this physical and nervous system stuff and how powerful our subconscious is in this human experience specifically. Yes, you can have the intention and you can put the effort to really try to engage in spiritual practices or really try and manifest things into your life. But if you are constantly in a state of being triggered and you have these subconscious beliefs and, doubts and, all of this stuff like that you're not worthy or that this inherently has to be hard, like the world is going to reflect what you really truly believe. And it's going to be very hard for you to reprogram new beliefs about yourself if you're in that stressed, dysregulated nervous system because of what we talked about, that cognitive stuff, like the ability to learn new things and consider new ideas and build neural pathways. That is significantly more difficult in a stress response versus when you've learned how to regulate your body, when you've expanded your window of tolerance for being able to stay in a regulated stress response with different stress and triggers in your life, right? Being able to be and train your body to stay in a safe nervous system state will allow you to have more of the cognitive flexibility to adjust and update your mindset so it can be in line, like literally in line, in resonance with a lot of these spiritual things and these things that you're trying to manifest. Like, of course, you're getting blocked if you haven't attended those things, and you're trying to manifest stuff that vibrationally is at a different frequency than all of these fears and doubts and anxieties and shame and grief and things that are still in the cells of your body that you have not processed and released yet. Like, of course, that's going to be very difficult, right? So I feel like part of, my own perspective on all this healing stuff, and again, maybe it's this like Virgo, which is embodied healing and wellness, and Pisces, which is, mystical and emotional and spiritual healing, is that they have to go hand in hand. Like they have to go together. Like they're all elements of our experience. They are so much more deeply connected than even our Western culture is able to identify. And I think we're going to be able to measure this more and more as years come, just as, my own kind of prediction of it. But what has been made abundantly clear to me by my guides, by the Akashic records keepers and the records and the work that I've been doing in the records, through the readings and the books and all of the things that I've learned, is that these are so important to do in conjunction. Bringing it all the way back to the beginning of this, it was the episode with Haley Hoffman Smith and Ishpreet Kaye. And what Ishpreet was talking about with quantum leaping is in manifestation, there's something that you want, right? Let's imagine that this thing that you want is of one option of reality, one of the many realities that are available to you. And you get to step into whichever reality you want, right? There's this one reality you have in mind, and you identify how does it feel to be in that reality? how does it feel to be in that reality? How does it, like, what's it like to experience that, right? Like, what's the vibration? And really, that's like the emotional feeling of that. And what she says is that we spend 95% of our day thinking the same things, feeling the same things, like every single day. Again, that subconscious thing. And that's just a human element. Like there's nothing wrong with that. Like that's our brain helping us function. Like, of course, it's doing things on autopilot for us, right? 95% of the day is stuck feeling and thinking the same things. If you want to start matching the vibration of this reality that you've identified that you want to bring to you, you have to start consciously feeling the way that you feel in that reality now. So if like you start with 1% of the day, you spend time thinking and really visualizing and like embodying the feeling of that reality, right? And then the next day it's 2%, maybe it's 3%, like more and more and more, you're trying to like build up the amount of time that you're matching the frequency, you're embodying the feeling of that reality. That's what she was talking about, manifesting, which is an incredible episode. Does that not sound familiar? Does that not sound similar to this process of being in a dysregulated nervous system state, being stuck in a fear response, being stuck in a stress response that makes your ego mind like have like a vice grip on your subconscious beliefs, right? Like grips the bat real hard on those. Does that not sound the same as you doing that work of trying to spend more and more and more time in a regulated nervous system? Does that practice not sound almost the same, if not identical? Does to me. So again, doing some of that trauma healing work is foundational. It practices those skills that we're going to use in more what we might identify spiritual practices. And again, I really believe that you're going to experience a lot of resistance if you don't have these processes of what you could call shadow work, trauma healing work, or whatever. Like if you don't have the processes to attend to those things, to keep your body signaling to your body that's safe to experience these new and unfamiliar things, it's going to be very difficult to engage in these spiritual practices and manifest, period. That's why they're all important. That's why they're foundational, integrated. They're like this with each other. And that's what I mean when I'm talking about healing. So that's our channeled message for today. Let me know your thoughts. What was a big breakthrough for you? And if there's any elements of that that you want me to dive deeper on in future episodes. All right, our last segment for today's episode is Ask Bree. Again, this is kind of like an advice segment where you, the listeners, will submit questions to me. These questions are a little bit different than asking a question to the tarot cards. You don't really have to provide a lot of questions when you're only asking to tarot because your guides know what's going on. As long as you're being specific about the situation and like your intention for the cards, they can answer pretty directly. This is a little different because I'm also offering my 2 cents. So having a little bit more context about what it is that you want guidance on is helpful for that part of it. But I will also be pulling a tarot card. So you get my 2 cents, my intuitive guidance. If there's certain like psychic things about it, I'll share that, of course. And then I'll also pull a card for the question. Okay, so for today, I put out some feelers for questions for the first episodes. And what's so funny is I got a question that was virtually the same from 2 different people. So that's the question that I'm going to answer on today's episode. Again, they were slightly different, but the essence of the question was the same. So I'm going to answer this question as one, and I'm going to pull 2 different cards, one for each of the people who submitted it. So here is the question for today. As I'm going through a time of transition, I'm looking for a new job. I'm struggling to find something that isn't too 3D and still can incorporate my spirituality and my gifts without sacrificing the paycheck I'm bringing home as a single person. What advice do you have for career transitions after your spiritual awakening? How do you know when you're listening to your guides, the universe, and not letting your ego hold you back? This is a stellar question. And even in like the groups that I'm in, mainly the Mystic Michaela spiritual family, I see people asking this question all the time. Like when you kind of like wake up with this awareness of, this different level of way of connecting with yourself in the world, it can make being in this very human world feel difficult because it's just the reality of what it is. Like we're still here, we got to pay bills, like, it can be very hard. So thank you for this question. I feel called to just share that this is something that I have been thinking and working on personally for probably the last 5 years. I had my spiritual awakening, probably I would say maybe like 2017, 2018. Um, I was in the corporate world, had a couple different corporate jobs, and I was really grappling with this sense and this question of how do I do something that feels more spiritually fulfilled? I was going through this process of again understanding who I was for what felt like for the first time really ever, and realizing that some things weren't working for me, right? Like some things were not aligned, some things were really overstimulating, some things just were not fulfilling. And I was identifying, like starting to go through that process of like, wait, what do I like? What does feel good? What does feel fun? Right. And I will say that it was a gift to be able to be in a job that could pay my bills and provide that level of security while I went through that process and was able to kind of play around and engage with new things and just be in that discovery mode, right? So if that's not a way that you're thinking about that, maybe that's a new perspective is like wherever we can introduce some gratitude for our current situation, it helps draw in the things that we want a lot easier. I will caveat this. If you are in an abusive or significantly toxic workplace, like don't take abuse. You don't need to do that. Absolutely look for another job. You deserve to be in environments that treat you with respect. Period. Spirituality and stuff aside, like period. Okay, bringing it back to the question, you're getting a sense that there might be something that would feel more aligned or more spiritually fulfilled. And in the question, I think that they specifically asked without sacrificing like the bills or like the financial security. What I think is really interesting about the way that that question is worded is what that kind of implies to me is that you have some sort of subconscious belief that these are two separate things. Or maybe the only examples that you've seen of people who are doing spiritually fulfilling work is that they're martyring their financial wellness. Like, if that's really what there's a subconscious belief about, that in order to be spiritually fulfilled, I can't make money, I can't be comfortable, I can't be wealthy, like, then of course your reality is reflecting that. Whoa, whoa, that's a big one, right? But in general, I would recommend, in addition to continuing that discovery, to make sure you're really, really clear about what it is that you do want and what would be fulfilling. Because I also have the sense that maybe you're still kind of in the midst of that and you're not totally sure yet. I would also be doing some of what you could call the shadow work or limiting belief inquiry, right? About what your ideas are around the possibilities of you having some kind of job where your life feels full and easy and comfortable and secure, and you have freedom that money grants you at the same time while feeling very spiritually and soulfully fulfilled, right? And that doesn't require you doing some spiritual line of work. Like you don't have to be doing like energy healing or something like I am. Like you could do what might be more of a normal job, but the way that you're doing it and the way that it aligns with the things that feel important to you, like really scratch that itch, right? So it could be anything. Um, what I'm also feeling called to say is that there are a million possibilities in which things can work out. Our mind, our ego, tells us what's most likely based on past data, past experience. If we think about like all of the experience in the world ever, our personal experience is like a little tiny blip. So our brain is telling us like what is most likely based on the most limited, tiny subset of data. Okay. Very visceral and real for us, but not comprehensive. So when you're thinking about what's possible, and again, I'm pairing this with this idea of like maybe reprogramming some of these ideas about, you know, what that might look like. Really tell yourself, like, there are a million different ways that like miracles could happen in this part of my life. Like, there are a million different ways that a job could come that I didn't anticipate or that looks a little different or that like I didn't even think existed. Like, there's a million different ways that could happen for you. Um, so believing that that's possible is also a big part of bringing it in. The last thing I'll say is I also found for myself and my friends that I've talked to about these things is that sometimes there's also a little bit of self-worth stuff tied in this. Like feeling like in order to gain or receive money, like you have to work super hard or you have to overextend yourself or it's just part of the game to like be in a job that has elements that really suck. I guess if you believe that, then that's what's going to be reflected, but I don't believe that that's how it has to be at all. I believe that you are worthy of whatever you want just for existing. I know it's going to trigger a lot of people. That goes against ways that you've been thinking about the world. I understand. But just consider that you don't have to put up with a lot of BS in order to make good money. You don't have to do this one subset of job that you really don't like in order to make good money. You don't have to work 50, 60 hours a week. You don't have to put up with a toxic boss. You don't have to be in an industry that feels really icky to you. No, like you can make good money without overextending and without all of that other stuff. You're worthy of that. You don't have to perform. You don't have to do. You don't have to produce to earn it. That's a very like capitalist, like yin energy, like way of looking at it. That's very ingrained in our culture, but is not true in like a higher dimensional way of looking at things. It's like a very 3D element. And it's understandable that we would think that way. Again, we're a product of our environments to a certain extent until we start doing this work. But maybe starting to challenge some of those ideas will help you feel like those things are possibilities. Again, help you match the frequency of those things, like really be able to imagine being in them and like feel like, of course it's like that, right? And I feel like that's going to help not only you come up with more specific ideas in your mind's eye of what that could look like, but of course will also help bring those things to you. For the other person that asked this question, I will just say that continue to do that self-discovery in the meantime. If you're in a safe situation, um, continue to do that like self soul discovery because the more specific you get about what will work for you, what will give you a sense of stability, what will give you a sense of joy, the more that you're able to be clear about what that is, the better the universe, your guides are going to be able to bring it to you. So, what does it mean to be stable? Flesh that out. And it doesn't even have to be like certain examples of like an interaction with another person, but like to you, what does that feel like to be stable? Right? What does it feel like to be fulfilled? What does it feel like to feel peace? What does it feel like to feel joy? This is kind of like a manifesting stuff too, but like the more places in your life you can consciously, mindfully connect with that feeling, even if it's just for the 5 minutes that you sit and drink coffee in the morning, if you feel a deep sense of peace and safety and contentment, like soak up those 5 minutes. Be so mindful with those 5 minutes because when you start to do that, that feeling is going to multiply in your life. If there are times when you get your weekly paycheck that you think to yourself, like, ah, I feel so grateful for the sense of security that this gives me. Spend 2 minutes thinking about that every time you get that direct deposit, right? Like cultivate that feeling more and more, and you're going to get more of it, even if the full like reality of your experience isn't that quite yet. Okay. So now I'm going to pull some cards. The first card is going to be for the person who asked that question verbatim. You know, you are a J, may or may not be a part of your name. Okay. What is the card for you? Okay, so the card that we have for the first question asker is the Nine of Wands. The Nine of Wands has things to do with boundaries and protecting yourself and being defensive. There's a couple different ways that we could interpret this. One, this could mean that you like really protecting and guarding the boundaries of your field of yourself is important, right? How we act to other people is a signal to the universe of what we believe about ourselves and what we're worth, right? So if that's how people are treating you, if it's how people are respecting you, if it's if people are seeing you or not, like really upholding boundaries as a signal to like what we feel like deserve is like a big element in all of this, right? The other element of this card is that this defensiveness is almost automatic. Like there's this anticipation of somebody like coming at you and this defensiveness, this guarding of yourself is again, it's like automatic. this card invites you to observe like which one of those resonates with your experience. And if it is a defensive sort of upholding of boundaries and guarding yourself, is that really serving you? And is this anticipation of it sort of feeding into it happening more, right? So your relationship with anticipating bad things happening, upholding boundaries for yourself, Nine of Wands. Okay, so our second card for the other person who asked this question, name may or may not have an E in it. The card for you specifically is a reversed Five of Pentacles. Okay, Five of Pentacles has to do with like hardships and resilience, like coming back from tough times. The reversed card specifically represents coming back from an illness, like a physical illness or like a financial loss recently. What this is asking you to do is to reflect on both what got you into that situation and also how you got yourself out. Is there a way that you can attend to your health and your money in a way that will help protect you and provide more stability for you in the future? And also, like, give yourself credit for the things that you did to move forward and to be resilient, right? If there are like self-sabotaging behaviors that you might uncover when you're doing some of this reflective work about whatever this past situation was, again, this is a signal to me in my own self-work that there might be some self-worth issues. There might be some self-worth ideas that are telling you that you're not really worthy of consistent financial security and wealth, or that you're not really worthy of treating your body or yourself in a way that keeps you healthy, right? Like things like that might be coming up. But this card specifically asks you to reflect on those things so that you can feel more empowered in how you can support yourself and having futures that feel more stable and healthy. All right. And that is it for episode 1 of Breakthroughs with Bree. I hope that you had some great breakthroughs with me today. You can follow along with me on social media. On Instagram, I'm at Healing with Bree, and that's BRE. On TikTok, I'm at healing.with.bree. And of course, you're already here on my YouTube channel. Please submit your questions for the Ask Bree segment, either by emailing me at breakthroughswithbree@healingwithbree.net. So again, it's the name of this podcast at healingwithbree.net, which is my website. Breakthroughswithbree@healingwithbree.net. Send me the question, give me some context so I can give you my 2 cents and pull a card for you. You can book services with me on my website if you're interested. I do one-on-one virtual Akashic Records channeling, astrology services, birth chart consultations, energy healing, and I also do sessions that's a combination of energy healing with both of those types of services if you just can't pick between them. I can't wait to see what breakthroughs we have in the future. I hope you guys all have a wonderful week, and I will see you next Monday.